Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to be installing something that I've been looking forward to for a long time for the Yamaha Super Tenere, and those are the heated grips that finally came in. So in today's video, I'm going to be trying to install them. Hopefully I don't mess them up. And maybe next week, I won't have freezing hands on the way to work. Alright, so here are the heated grips that I got. I ordered these from Partzilla, and they took a little bit of time to come in because they were back ordered, but I finally got them after about a month of waiting. So I didn't order the full kit. The full kit is around $320 to $350, but you could save a little bit of money by ordering things piecemeal. So I ordered just the left grip, the right grip, and then this little wire holder. This wire holder was like $20, but it seemed better safe than sorry. So altogether, I paid $290 with tax, and I think if I were to buy everything kind of prepackaged, it would have been $330 to $350, like I said. And the only thing I'm missing is a screw. I think it's an M3 screw, which I can just throw in. I have a bunch of those anyway, and I didn't want to pay the extra just for that. It doesn't come with instructions like it would if you bought the full thing, but you can find those online. And yeah, I'll have all the part numbers in the description below. So I'm going to start with the left grip first. It seems the easiest. And I'm going to remove this hand guard, and for that I'm just going to remove this bolt and these two bolts up here. There's one more bolt holding the handguard in from the bottom, but I'm just going to let that kind of hang there so it's kind of out of the way, but it's not off. All right, so next up I got a 12 millimeter hex here, and I'm just going to loosen this up. And this one was super tight for me. I think there's a lot of thread lock or something on here. So it took a little bit of force to get off, but there you go, it's a big bolt. All right, to try and get this grip off, it is glued on. I'm just gonna try and rotate it to break the glue a little. There you go. And should be able to just try and spin it off. There we go. So it wasn't too bad. You can see a little bit of glue on the sides here, so I'm just gonna clean that up with rubbing alcohol, and then the new grip can go on. I'm going to try and put the new grip on now. So just, make sure that you're using the one without the throttle tube. That's pretty obvious, but seems like a mistake I would probably make. And this might be a little controversial because the instructions definitely say to glue this on, but I have not ever glued on any grips. I just throw some rubbing alcohol on top as lubricant and then try and shove it on. Just because if I ever want to remove this in the future, I don't want to make it even harder on myself. And I haven't had any issues with the grips really twisting. And with the handguard on the side here, I'm not really worried about it falling off or anything. So I'm just going to use some rubbing alcohol, but if you want to go by the book, then you should use some glue, I guess. The other important thing to note is to make sure that the wire is facing downward. So, you don't install it like upwards like this or something else. There is a channel, which I can show you later, where the wire is supposed to go through. And that's it. And let me show you what it looks like on the underside. So this is what it looks like on the underside. You can see that the switch block up here already came with this little channel right up here. Oops, sorry, right there. And it has these two little tabs to keep the wire in place as well. So just make sure that this is kind of routed more downward so you can orient it into this channel here. All right, and all I'm going to do now is put back the bar end and the handguard, and this side should be pretty much good to go other than the wiring. All right, the side's all done. Let's move on to the hard side. All right, so here we are on the throttle side. This is going to be a little harder because we do have the throttle cables that we got to work with, although it should be easier to remove the grip itself because it'll come off with the throttle tube. So same thing, gonna remove this bolt, these two bolts up here, and then the bar end weight, and get all this out of the way so we can pull this out. Probably a good idea to clean up all that crap. Okay, so from what I can tell, we need to remove these two screws here. There's one right here and one up here, and that should split this throttle cable housing. I'll also move this out of the way, just so that the housing can come apart. And then we should be able to remove these two bolts. Oops. So maybe don't be like me and let this fall off. But just to let you know, there are two different length screws here. And so you want to make sure to put these back in the right spots. So the top one is the shorter one, and then the bottom one is the longer one. And next up, I'm just going to disconnect these two throttle tubes, or throttle cables from the tube, I should say, sorry. And these just slide straight out, and that's it. All right, so we're back at the bench right now, just to prepare all this. So I've got the two halves of the throttle tube housing, as well as the little clip that you get. That was $20, by the way. And then I have just this M3 screw that I found lying around. I think this is an M3 by 6mm screw, but I have confirmed that these threads are M3, and where this screw would go is right in there. And so this will just kind of sit like this, and you'll have a little spot for your wire to go through, and just make sure that it's being held properly. I have read that you don't really need these, but I mean, when you're already spending $300, I guess 20 bucks isn't a huge amount, but you may decide to not go with that as well. And here is the heated grip. Now you can see it already has a little grommet here, and I believe that also would end up sitting in this little channel right here. So you can see everything lines up really nicely. And once this is in the channel, this one will kind of hold it in there as well. So just sandwich it on there. So what we're going to do first is, the manual does say to grease up a few spots. So mainly these two areas here, and then this area down here, this little square on this side, and then where the little clip would screw into. And then on this side, basically this whole area over here needs to be greased. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some of this lithium grease that I have sitting around. I use it on everything, and it seems to work pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and smear a little bit of that on. So as you can see, I didn't go crazy with putting grease on here. It's just a little thin coat, should be enough. Next up, I think what makes sense is to try and get this situated in here and get the clip on there. So I think there should be a little loop so that there's some slack, so when you move the throttle, it doesn't bind up. So I think something like this would work, and then I'm going to try and get this in as well. All right, so I've got it all snug down. So you can see that this clip actually does hold the entire wire in place. So it's probably useful to have that. Next up, I just need to try and get this wire in the right place. So I'm just gonna try and move it around. This clip is pretty flexible, so I can kind of bend it as I need to. I'm trying to be gentle with the wire so I don't pinch it somewhere. There we go. I think, based on what I've seen from the instructions, this looks about right, where the wire goes like this through the clip and then around the other side. So I think this looks pretty good. It would, there's plenty of range of motion there. So now next up, I'm going to take this back to the bike, and I think we're just going to try and put this all back together. All right, so we're back at the bike. I'm just going to put the throttle tube on with the housing, connect up the throttle cables, and then try and put the other side of the housing on as well. It's a little more complicated because the housing was not attached to the previous throttle tube because there was no wire holding it together, obviously. So it's a little different, but it hopefully will go back together just fine. Okay, so while installing the throttle tube, I thought I'd point out a few things that you want to make sure. Make sure that this little nib right here, you can kind of just see, that has to go into the handlebar. There's a little hole right in the back, so it'll go in and it'll kind of lock itself in like this. So make sure that that actually happens and that you don't just kind of smash it anywhere on the bar. And then you also want to just make sure that while you put everything in, you know, everything kind of lines up where it's supposed to. Otherwise, your throttle won't turn very easily. Make sure that these little plastic bendy bits here, they actually fit into the channels or into these metal housings. And there's a little slot for them to actually fit into. Might be a little hard to see with my hands, but you can see there's a little bump right here. And that corresponds to this little bump in this plastic, and it will slide right in. So make sure that all the pieces are kind of sliding in and going where they should. Don't try and just smash it together with the bolts and tighten everything up. Make sure everything is still, you know, loose, nothing is pinched, and that your throttle works at the end of this. So once it's on, just try and find that little, you can see it's not really rotating too much. That's because it's in the peg is in the handlebar hole and everything is kind of lined up nicely. And just make sure that you kind of get to this point before you go ahead and stick the bolts in and tighten everything up. I'd also recommend just tightening these up evenly, so you're not putting too much torque on one bolt over the other. So maybe like 1 or 2 passes back and forth, and it should be good to go. And then finally, I'm just gonna slip this boot back on like that. It should be good to go. You can see it does return, so I think we're good. So the last thing to do is to connect up the 2 wires. Now, thankfully, the Super Tenere already has the wiring built in for this, so you can utilize the dashboard to control your heated grips. But the wiring is behind this panel, so you just have to remove 4 quarter turn fasteners and then sneak this panel off, and the wiring will be behind that. So before I pop this panel off, I just like to make sure that I'm trying to protect it as much as I can by putting a towel down on the crash bar. And then just got to pop these 4 fasteners off. And they are quarter turn, so you don't have to go crazy on them or anything. There we go. All right, so just look for this little cluster of wires over here with this rubber sheathing over it, and pull that back, and you should be able to see the wiring that we need to access. So these 2 plugs. And so that's for your heated grips, and this comes stock from the factory, so it's really nice to just be able to plug into these, which is why I paid the premium for the heated grips. Okay, so the wiring is done, and I didn't really try filming it because of just how tight the filming would be, but let me show you how it's routed. On the throttle side here, you could see the wire going right down here, and I just fed it through this clamp, and then that goes down to this bundle of wires right here. Same with the left side. So you could see down here that the wire goes through that block and then through this clamp right here, and then follows this little bundle of wires down. You can see it running right there with the blue. Both of those meet at this section of wires, and I just went ahead and used the stock clamps right here. So this clamp here, and then this zip tie is kind of similar to this tie right here, where you just pull this tab back and it'll loosen up. So just go ahead and loosen up this one here, and then there's one more down there that you can see. So it's a little tight to get your fingers in there, but you can do it. So you just feed these 2 wires right here, down there, and then they come out right here with these 2. So you just have to kind of feed your fingers up behind the tank a little bit right here, and you're able to kind of grab the connectors, fed them through this last one here, and they're right there. And now you could just go ahead and slip this boot over, and you're done. All you need to really make sure is that the handlebars turn without any pinching or stretching of the wires. So with the handlebars at one end, just make sure that nothing is getting pinched here and that the wiring is kind of all slack and that you can move it around. And then same on the other side. But with the way that you're supposed to route it like this, there's really no issues with it getting pinched or caught anywhere. So finally, let me show you how this works. So you just turn on the bike, and with this icon right here, if you have the heated grips installed, you just press the menu button, and that'll change into the heated grip icon. And now all you have to do is press the up and down buttons here to change the level of heat that you want. So as you can see, it's very nicely integrated and you don't have any extra buttons on the handlebars. So that's another great reason to go with these grips. Anyway, I hope this video was at least somewhat helpful. There's a little bit of figuring out to do, but it's pretty straightforward for the most part. The fact that all the wiring is already there for you on the bike makes it super easy to do, at least in terms of, no cutting, no soldering, no trying to find a power source. It's all right there for you. If you found this video helpful, please let me know in the comments. But thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.